This is International Master Eric Kislik, and today we'll be looking at the game Karjakin Caruana, which was a pretty shocking, decisive game in this round 12 of the candidates tournament in Berlin. Only 2 rounds left, and Karjakin won the game to pull even for first, so this is really going to be a wild finish. So let's take a look at the game. It looks like Caruana just played the Petroff. He was presumably happy with the draw in this game, and I guess he thought he was going to get it. So Karjakin took on e5, d6, knight f3, knight takes e4. In this tournament, we've seen a fair amount of knight c3 here. We've seen queen e2 here. Knight c3 was played now, and now Caruana simply took and played knight c6. I've actually played the same setup with black before. I'll be showing a line that I had in one of my own games against a grandmaster, just a very short line. So bishop e3, bishop e7. So basically white's setup is usually to go either bishop e3, bishop f4, and then queen to d2, and queenside castle. And basically the position is almost symmetrical, but white's normally aiming to try to obtain a very small space advantage and just keep black just a little bit passive. And you'll see the idea that Karjakin played, which was somewhat challenging and perhaps could have given him equality in the game, or chances to break out of equality in the game, I should say. So queen d2 was played for a long time. People play these positions with black, trying to simply castle kingside. Nowadays, the main setup is to go bishop e6 and queenside castle later after queen d7. And I first studied this idea in a book by Konstantin Sakayev, who is a quite strong grandmaster, and I was quite convinced of the soundness of the lines. So bishop e6, queenside castle, queen d7, so black's just planning to castle queenside here. In my own game against Grandmaster Grosspeter, he played h4 against me, and I just simply played h6. So basically, I just wanted to cover the g5 square. I wanted to limit knight g5, and my opponent went knight to d4, and so I simply took on d4. He took with the queen, and I simply played bishop f6. And the position was approximately equal. I could have played castle here, but I thought there was nothing wrong with bishop f6, so why not just play it? So in the game, Karjakin played a very, very rare move. He played the move a3, which I don't see in any games in the database here. There might be something that's not in my base, but I don't see anything here. And yeah, it just seems like he wanted to take Caruana out of book. In many cases, white plays king to b1, so here he's arguably trying to just play without moving his king. So Caruana simply went for h6, looked like a sensible move, and now knight to d4 was played. So basically, white's idea after knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, is to just keep an eye on g7, keep a little pressure there, and see what black's going to do. A natural way to play here would also just be to castle, and then if rook g1, we can go d5, g4, c5, and at g5, a tricky little attacking idea, maybe just simply h5, and I don't really see anything here for white, so this would be a quite sound way for black to play. So he just went rook to g8. Presumably he just thought, well, I'll just play solidly here and I shouldn't have any problems. Here I had one idea for white. My idea for white was to go h3, and then if c5, like was played in the game, bishop to e3, queenside castle, I could go g4, rook ge8, bishop g2, and one of my ideas is to try to just simply go bishop d5 and basically just claim a small strategic advantage just because I'm controlling the light squares well in the center. So because of white's slight light square bind, he probably has a small advantage. So anyway, bishop to e2 was played, and now c5, and black continued with d5. So also, I think it would have been fine to just queenside castle, king b1, rook ge8. And this seems to be quite okay as well. So d5 was played, and white went f4. This looked like a good way to play. f4, queenside castle, bishop f3. There really didn't seem to be any other idea for white to try, but his pieces are all pretty well placed. So what I would have done with black is I would have just played the simple queen c7, just moving out of the way, and then after g4, I go bishop f6. And so I've defended the c5 pawn with my queen, and I'm getting ready to go d4 in the center. And so here I don't think black has any problems at all. Let's say here, and I go d4, takes, and I would say black has already fully equalized. So that would have been easier for black to play than what he did in the game. So he went bishop g4, and I assume he thought he would just simplify the position and wouldn't have any problems. The only problem here is that actually white played the quite amazing exchange sacrifice bishop takes d5, which was a very practical sack. And you'll see why a few moves later. But actually, white could have just simply played queen to e2. And now, if bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, queen c6, white can just play something like this, like rook h1, bishop f6, bishop f2. So one idea is to start marching over here, to go g4, h4, and go g5 to chase the bishop away. So for instance, if rook d7, g4, d4, now it seems like white is a little bit better in this position. I admit that the structure looks a bit ugly for both sides, but white should actually be a little bit better here. So this was a risk-free way for white to play. Perhaps Caruana thought he would draw that, but the position that came about in the game after bishop takes d5, this was hard to play. So he has the choice. Should he take on d1 immediately, or should he play a useful move first? Actually, it would have been quite interesting to throw in this move rook ge8. And the point is that the rook can't move because he's still defending the bishop. So let's say if bishop takes f7, here we can play the move queen to f5. And after queen f5, bishop d5, we have the nice move b5, and this is quite nice because it restricts c4. So that's something preventing bishop takes f7. So after queen to f2, here we can take and go queen c7, and this is a much better version. So if c4, we can play f5. So this would have been a much more, or at least a slightly more solid version of what was played in the game. So in the game, went bishop takes, rook takes, queen c7, c4. So you might be wondering, why did white sacrifice the exchange? Well, what white got was white obtained the bishop pair, and white has a very firm bishop on d5, which is his unopposed bishop. It is quite a strong bishop. But he also has a pawn, and he also has very good central control. So it's not so easy for black to get out of this. So black tried to play rook ge8, which was a good move. And now white tried to break the pins. So white went queen to f2. Looked like a good move. Now probably the best would have just been to simply go f5. And what this does, one of the nice points of this is that it controls a lot of squares. So it also restricts white from playing g4, which was one of white's main ideas. So f5 would have been a nice move to throw in here. And for instance, if rook d3, we can just go b6, king b1, king b8, and actually we're perfectly solid here. So this would have been definitely the best move to play here. So b6, this was also not bad. This was also not bad. Now white got to play g4. At least white got to carry out one of his main ideas. So, and an important point here is if bishop takes f7, you might have been wondering, well, can't we just take that pawn? But then we have take, and we have the move bishop h4, and then this is hanging at the end. So in this case, black is actually doing very well because of the tactical vulnerabilities. So white just continued calmly with g4, bishop f6 was played, and he calmly played king to b1. So now, black actually made a very important mistake, which created problems with his coordination. So what happened here is he simply played rook to d7, but what this does is it makes it difficult for his queen to have any sort of active play, any sort of active participation in what happens. What would have been much stronger would have been to go queen to e7. And what this does is it attacks the bishop, and it also prepares to go bishop h4, preventing h4 and g5, which was one of white's ideas. So that was one of white's only pawn breaks to make progress. So if here, can play bishop h4, queen g1, and we can play f6. And here, let's say rook f1, king to c7, and black is doing totally fine. The important thing is that black has stopped white from making any progress at all on the queen side, on both sides of the board. He can't do anything on the queen side, that's clear, and he can't do anything on the king side. So he's basically stopped all of his play. He's controlling the center well, he's controlling the e-file, and so black should hold together the position. But take a look at what happens now. This was kind of one of those sort of sit and wait moves, which was quite unassuming and really missed what white could do. So now white goes rook d3, and now this is quite a serious threat. And the point, one of the points is the rook defends the bishop, so bishop takes h4 can't be played. So my best idea for black was really a little bit desperate, to give back a pawn, to go takes, and if rook takes, to go queen c5. And then here to basically just say, okay, well, white has two pawns for the exchange, and those two pawns are these double c pawns here. He has a strong bishop on d5, definitely has an advantage, but it's not going to be easy at all to win this. Black's pieces are actually pretty well placed, so that would have clearly been much better than what was played in the game. So he played g5, and this might have looked a little mysterious, but really what he was trying to do is he was trying to limit that move h4. So now the move king a2 was very nice. He just moved his king to a safer square, and one of the points is he has a lot of interesting little maneuvers here. You'll see, for instance, if king to b8, he can go bishop d2. In some cases, because here one of the ideas, he can come here in some cases, or rook h3 in some cases. Here rook f3 is stronger, so after rook f3, queen d7, we can just go takes, 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 and b3, and here white has a winning position. So if rook e to e7, he just played queen to f3, and so he prepared to maneuver here. Queen to f3 was just one of a number of maneuvers that he could have played. So king to d8 was played. Black really couldn't find anything to do. He was just hoping to sit tight and hoping that there would not be a decisive blow. So bishop to d2 was played. King to c8, you can see he was just shuffling. And this was a very strong maneuver. So again, this queen retreat, it might not have looked like it was doing much, but first of all, it has the rook f3 idea, but actually, more importantly here, rook to h3 is troubling, and also there's the idea of queen c1, which is a very strong move as well. Basically, we're undermining g5 and we're undermining h6. So we're hitting two targets with one simple retreating move. So this queen f1 move is a very beautiful positional move. And I think it's exactly the type of move that a lot of players would miss when they have a big advantage and they're trying to press it home. But they just simply miss the move, or they try to be too direct. So for example, f takes g5 would be much weaker because black could just take back. But here after queen f1, so now I'll illustrate a line. So for instance, if queen to b8, we just go queen c1. And now you can see this just breaks down. So for instance, if rook e2, we go f takes g5, bishop takes g5, bishop takes g5, h takes g5, queen takes g5, and then if here, I can just check. And basically, I just want to put my queen in a dominant position. I just go here, and now I can go queen c6, queen f2. Now I'm in the right spot to just push my pawn, so I can just go h4. So it takes a bit of maneuvering for white, but certainly this queen c1 idea is very, very strong. So this queen f1 move was a really powerful maneuver. This was a fantastic find by Karjakin, so he definitely deserves all the credit for finding this move. So rook to d6 was played, and now you'll see what happens. g5 collapses because of the check on f5. So he gets this check in, snags the pawn, and I don't know, there's not much to see here. This was converted rather directly. So takes, queen f5 check, rook d7, queen takes g5, queen e5. He made the correct choice to not trade queens. I thought the best move was just to go f6, although after simply h4, king c7, g5, for instance, if queen to g6, it appears that it's not going to be possible to actually defend here. G takes f6 is a very serious threat. So white is definitely still winning in that case. Basically, white just has this dominant bishop and a very strong pass pawn he's about to create, which will be supported by that bishop. So I still think f6 would have been a better defense than king d8. Here he just got to go g5, and black's play is just frozen. He has no f6, there's no counterplay at all. So queen to d6, check. Rook e8, queen h4, nice strong move. Queen g6, queen g4. Now he's just preparing to advance the pawn. It's basically saying, all right, I'm just going to advance the pawn up the board. What are you going to do? So rook e5, h4, king to e7. Okay, so he has to maneuver his rook a little bit. Rook d2. Yes, this was quite nice. This was quite nice. So we went rook d2, and now, for instance, if rook to d6, he could go rook to f2. But b5 was played. He was trying to get counterplay, but he was struck by bishop takes f7, which is a very nice move. He's simply targeting the rook on d7, and yeah, there's not really a good move to play here. He tried queen f5, but now this was very nice. He just went into the endgame. Takes, g6. So how exactly do you stop this now? I mean, one idea is to go h5, rook takes h5, and then just push the pawn with g7. So he went king e7 to try to latch onto the bishop, and then white simply took the pawn. So this was just very good calculation by Karjakin. Rook h5, c4. Notice the c4 pawn is defended by the bishop always, so everything's safe. Simply when a4 is just marching the pawns up the board. So here, a5, king to d6, a6, king c7, king b3. Now white's plan, basically just march the king over. Just march the king over. When the rook goes down, you just march the king up and push down to g7, win the rook, and the game's over. So this is just an immediate knockout. So pretty amazing game by Karjakin. I mean, basically he played with, I would say he played without any risk at all. He played that sacrifice. I assume that he didn't really think it was going to be that powerful. He just thought, okay, well, here's a good practical sacrifice. Let's see what my opponent has here. Let's see how it goes for him, and let's see if he can defend. And his opponent really had to find queen e7. Caruana definitely had to find queen e7 on move 22. When he didn't find that move, when he played rook d7 and rook d3 came in, white had a pretty serious advantage, and black was just struggling to defend from there. Then once queen f1 came in, white just basically blew him off the board. So a beautiful positional game by Karjakin, and the final 2 rounds should be very, very exciting.